Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another interview on MMA Unhinged. And as you can see, we got Cage Titans president, Michael. An absolute pleasure. How are you?
Pleasure, my man. How you guys doing over there today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to have you on. An absolute pleasure. We were just quickly talking before we went on air. We're talking about all your types of beers, lagers. I think that's fantastic. It's a great little touch. And if I'm mistaken, I can't think of anyone that is doing that right now. So that's different. It's unique.
Yeah, what we like to do is really kind of like do more than just the fights themselves. Like everybody can just put fighter A versus fighter B, let them beat each other up. But we really try to build a community, and fight week for us is an extension. We have press conferences and all your typical things like that. But we do a lot of tie-ins with like local community places and some of these breweries back 3 years ago. They just started brewing Cage Titans Fight Night beer. So we started with Second Wind Brewing, which is a local brewery in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And they started with Fight Night IPA. And then now we have a Fight Night IPA. We have a lightweight lager. And then we also come out with a seltzer. I know it's not big in England, but trust me, it's going to come over to England soon. And they're going to be hard seltzers that people are going to enjoy.
Yeah, listen to that, guys. It's absolutely phenomenal. I can't, and like I said, I can't think of anyone that's doing that. Like lagers, if we had that in the UK for, I don't know, for a local show, everybody would be all over that. That is phenomenal. It's absolutely. I wish Cage Titans were over in the UK. I wish I was in America. This is brilliant.
Hey, well, there's a reason for you to come over to America. The cool thing about this as well is that all of our shows have a theme. So as you see the poster that you have behind you, for the next show, the beer can will be it will be themed just like that. So every event, whether it was, this was our St. Patrick's Day show last year, and we did a St. Patrick's Day lager. IPA, and every event we brew a new beer with a new can, a new theme, and it ties into whatever that show is.
That is fantastic. I can't get it off the top of my head. Honestly, I'm going to be thinking about that all day now. I'm like, I wonder what it tastes like. So it's going to be good. But yeah, obviously no show on St. Patrick's Day this year. So that was unfortunate for you because that would have been a good selling point.
Yeah, well, last year we did a double header. We did a day show with all the amateurs, and then we came back at night and did an all-pro card. It was our best card of the year last year. Some really big banger fights. Like, it was insane. But this year, what we like to do is we schedule our shows at the beginning of the year for the whole season, for the whole entire year. We're not doing shows where it's like, okay, we just did one, and then we're thinking of when the next one is. We have January 27th was our first show of the year. 8 weeks later, we did our next show, which happens to be March 30th. Then 8 weeks later, we do May 25th. 8 weeks later, we do July. So we have that all. We kind of have like a nice little series of events for the entire year planned. It just happened to not fall on St. Patty's Day this year. Last year, we kind of got the best. We had a couple holidays that we fell on. We fell on St. Patrick's Day. We also fell on Veterans Day. I actually want to show you the Veterans Day. The Veterans Day beer.
You've got a beer. That's incredible. This is incredible.
So this was Veterans Day last year, the show that we did on Veterans Day. And, obviously the Stars and Stripes theme. So we had a Veterans Day. I already showed you the St. Patrick's Day beer. So, yeah, we're more than just a fight company. I like to say to people that are new to Cage Titans is we're a marketing company that just happens to market MMA. I was a former fighter. I truly enjoyed the sport, and I knew my ceiling in the sport as a competitor. I didn't have far to go. I got in the sport late, and I didn't think I could go too far as a competitor, but I knew that I could give back to the sport in different ways. And Cage Titans was launched back in 2010, and here we are 14 years later.
Yeah, you just talked about it there, and I'll quickly ask you about that. Being a fighter, then moving into this sort of business, and being a president, being like being a promoter of an MMA promotion. Does that have that perks of being a former fighter, because you kind of know what the fighters expect / want, maybe on fight week or throughout the whole process of throughout the fight?
Yeah, man, absolutely. You know, a lot of people ask me in the past, like, what kind of has helped Cage Titans stay so long, and what helped kind of get it to this level that we've been on in this trajectory. And I really do think that it's because I was a fighter and I knew what they were going through. So in the early days when I started Cage Titans, I was a peer. People saw me fight on the same card as them. They saw me fight, so it was real easy to get fighters, and they had a trust in me. As it's progressed, 14 years now, some people don't even remember that I fought, but I always keep that mentality in my mind. Like, what would the fighters need? What would the fighters want? Um, and realistically, these guys are getting to live a dream of fighting and competing, and they're having a blast doing it, which the fans might go, why do you like fighting? But these fighters really enjoy doing it. They enjoy the competitive aspect. So me being a fighter, I know that at my core. So we make sure we go above and beyond to help promote these guys, uh, as best as we can, whether it's the posters, the videos, the other marketing stuff, our social media platform. We just really do everything to push them guys to the forefront, because it's more than just fighter A. It's telling the story, telling who these guys are. And I think that drops the stigma of fighting as just barbarians just clashing, and, they're barbaric people. They're real people who are just interested in this competitive venture.
Yeah, completely agree. That's the perfect way to put it. Absolutely spot on. We'll talk about your next event. Obviously, that's going down. Obviously, March 30th. Cage Titans 64. A great card. And top to bottom, we've got obviously former UFC fighter Jay Perrin, and obviously we've got veteran Johnny Campbell, who's been around the block, done it all. Why should fans tune into this one on March 30th?
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of hit the nail on the head. Jay Perrin, who was our Cage Titan, undefeated with Cage Titans, 6-0 before he got picked up on the Contender Series, then went on to the UFC. He came up short in his UFC run, but he's looking to, he's remotivated. He just had a baby. He's trying to get back there, and he's not taking an easy path. He's taken on Cub Swanson's main training partner, Chris McCate. If you know Cub Swanson, he's a UFC Hall of Famer. He's still competing as well. Chris is tough as they come, 7-2 record. He was a high-level collegiate wrestler. He's been wrestling his whole life. This is a huge test for Jay, and this is the perfect opportunity for both of these guys. Jay takes out this young, hungry up-and-comer who's trying to get to the UFC, and Chris McCate, and Jay's taking him on. And if he takes him out, it shows, hey, listen, UFC, I'm taking out these guys who are trying to get to you. I deserve to be there. As for Chris, if Chris comes up with this win, he easily has a case to say, I just took out a guy that was in the UFC. I belong there. Yeah, I'm 8-2 now. Give me a shot. So that fight's exciting in its own right. I know over in England, Johnny Cupcakes, you might have heard from Johnny Cupcakes Campbell. Famously, he went over to England when Paddy Pimblett was fighting Cage Warriors. And he was cornering a teammate. His teammate missed weight, and Paddy's like, nope, I'm not fighting. Johnny stripped down to his boxes, jumped on the scale, started yelling at Paddy, I'll fight you right now. I'll fight you right now. He was standing on the scale. The promoter had to drag him off the scale. So Johnny is a very colorful character, and he's a veteran. He's fought 24 times as a professional for Cage Titans. This kid's been around for a long time, a good friend of Cage Titans. He fought in Cage Titans 1, and here he is 14 years later. Another fight that you might be interested in is Peter Barrett. He's another former UFC fighter, trying to show that he has one more run. Since he got cut from the UFC, he's had 3 fights, 3 finishes, and he's looking to get another 4th one here over a tough guy in Tom Santos. Tom Santos has fought all over the world, Japan, Brazil. He's fought everywhere, and I think this is a tough fight for him. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the main event. John Piersma versus Everett Desalais. The pictures behind you. Piersma is just a tank at 170. 8-2, 7-2, I think. A lot of finishes. He's just been unstoppable. He made his Cage Titans debut with us back in January, and in the first minute and a half, he just double-legged his opponent, got that crucifix position, and just started elbowing him until the referee stopped it. It was so impressive. And then Everett Desalais come in, and he fought on that same card, and he just dismantled his opponent. Everett Desalais was an Olympic qualifier for judo. He's a world champion in judo. He's an All-American wrestler. This kid is just taking the MMA world here in New England by storm. Everett Soleil is only 3-0, but he just demolishes his opponents. And these two guys were the two most talked about fighters after the January card. And here we are, get to finally put them in there. And they square off for that Cage Titans welterweight title.
Absolutely, and as we can see here, the card here, you talked about some, obviously some fantastic fights. So we talked about Peter Barrett as well, Johnny Campbell. When you talked about him, I was like, oh my god! And then I talked about it, and I remember, obviously that fight, and obviously him getting onto the scale and screaming at Paddy, and that was good. Obviously, we've got Jay Perrin as well. I just want to quickly talk about Jay Perrin and Peter Barrett. Obviously, them two, obviously falling short their UFC career, and they're looking at Cage Titans as a chance to bounce back. Is that what it is for you as well, to give them an opportunity to, bounce back and then potentially again move on to that big show?
Yeah, I think that some MMA promoters, they try to get too big or ahead of themselves, and they want to be the next UFC, the next Bellator. I'm very comfortable in knowing what our role is. Our role as Cage Titans is to help guys achieve their goals overall for their sport. We're just a platform for them. So with a guy like Peter Barrett or Jay Perrin and their goals to get back to the UFC, it's like, we're here for you. They had all their fights going up to the UFC with us, and we were giving them the right fights and the right matchups and keeping them busy so that they could get as many fights as they needed to show the UFC they belong to be there. Then when they get cut, they have the opportunity. Do they give up their career, or do they try to put together a couple more wins to show the UFC they made a mistake and get right back there? I think that's what these guys are doing. I mean, they're trying to make one more run. I think that for Peter Barrett, for instance, when he was in the UFC when COVID was big. So gyms were shut down, and he had no training partners. He really had no real fight camps when he was fighting in the UFC. So he felt that he didn't get the full potential to show himself. So I think that's what we are. For a guy like those two, their goals are getting to the UFC. But there's other guys that are on the card that their goals are just to either be a local champion. Some of these guys, their goals are to have one or two fights just for fun and ride off to the sunset and tell their grandkids that they did it. We really aren't, we don't think too big. Whatever your goals and dreams are within the MMA cage, we have a platform and you have a home with us. We have actually a 46-year-old guy fighting as an amateur on this undercard. And he's just another guy. He was a guy who wanted to do this as a bucket list thing, and one fight turned into two. And then he had a friend who was stricken with cancer. So he said, I'm going to do one more fight and try to raise some money for his cancer treatment. So, we have a platform for everybody, whatever their goals are. And we're not just focused on only fighters who can make it to the UFC or only fighters who have the skills to be the UFC. We want guys that just want to be a part of MMA, and whatever their goals are, we can help achieve it.
Absolutely. Just one last question about the event itself then. One fight that's going under the radar, in your opinion, excluding Johnny Campbell, Jay Perrin, Peter Barrett, and obviously the main event. What's that one look like for you, where you think, this one probably should get more attention and it's going to be an absolute banger on fight night?
Man, I probably got two in there, and two of the competitors from the same school. I'd first say Miguel Savesin versus Jay Kixenbaugh. Miguel Savesin was a mediocre amateur, but he really he proved how tough he was. And he actually ended up going on and winning the Cage Titans lightweight title, amateur title. And then he lost it the very next fight. But what we saw from Miguel is he fought tough competition his entire amateur career. And he really knew that fighting as an amateur is about getting experience for when you decide to go pro. So he really took that to heart, and he showed a lot of grit and toughness. In his first pro fight, he fought a guy that many people thought he'd run over, but he faced some adversity and he was able to bounce back. So he's shown a lot, though he's a 1-0 pro fighter. He's shown a lot in his career here with Cage Titans. Then on the other side, Jay Kixenbaugh, he's kind of taken that same road. He was a 500, 3-3, 3-4, 4-3 type fighter as an amateur, but he fought everybody that was tough in front of him, and he showed a lot of heart, grit, and determination. He came to Cage Titans for his last event, and he was in a grudge match with Aaron Hughes, and he prevailed. He showed that he can come into enemy territory because he's probably about 7-8 hours away. He drives in, but he's about 7 or 8 hours away. He sells no tickets. Every time he comes in, he's fighting in enemy territory, but he shows that heart, that grit, that desire, and he's extremely tough. And I think this is going to be a great matchup for both of these guys. And then going to Miguel's teammate, Jack Congdon. Jack Congdon was slated to fight for our title 5 months ago, back in November. And Jack Congdon had a horrific injury that's kept him out of the cage for the last 5 months. And instead of jumping right back into a title fight, he wanted to get a matchup where he can kind of showcase his skills. And that's what he's going to be able to do against Sam Watford. He didn't want to jump right back into a title contention after sitting on the sidelines and other competitors that were more worthy in his mind there. Sam Watford, his record might not jump off the page on you, but this is a stylistic dream. Both these guys are traditional, martial arts type fighters. You'll see side kicks, spinning heel kicks. Sam comes from a Kempo karate type Taekwondo background. Same thing with Jack Congdon. He's a Taekwondo fighter. Very long fighters, very aggressive with their striking. So this fight is going to be a treat for the fans, because they're just going to stand, and you're going to see some interesting striking dynamics between the two of them. We talked before we came on air about Wonder Boy Thompson when he fought Darren Till. But both of these guys are, they're not Wonder Boy. No one's Wonder Boy, but they have that same traditional. Michael Venom Page is another one that comes to mind. Sideways stances, throwing, side kicks, hook kicks, all kinds of crazy kicks, setting up those punches. This is an extremely fun matchup that people might not say, hey, I got to see this, because Sam's record is not great, but he showed this is a stylistic matchup, I think, and that's why it should be interesting for people that want to see it on Fight Night.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you listen to Michael. He speaks phenomenal. It's incredible. It feels like you've always been doing this for ages. Hello, have you lost me? Oh no, that would be a nightmare. Hello. Hello.
Hey, I'm back.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. It was a little choppy for a second.
Okay, I got worried for a second, but yeah, absolutely. I just said make sure you listen to Michael, because it feels like you've been doing this for a long time, and you know what you're talking about.
Hey man, I'm not shy in front of the camera, as you can tell. We've been doing this. This is Cage Titans 64. We've done a couple combat nights and some other. This is almost our 70th event. And we bring it. Plymouth Memorial Hall, America's hometown. It's just an amazing event. Spectation Sports carries the event, so you guys can always just go over to Cage Titans website, click on the link, and live stream it. It's amazing, man, and I love the opportunity you had bringing me on, so we can maybe expand to new fan base. And instead of you having to come over to America to have some of these lagers, hey, maybe if we grow a fan base over there, I'll jump on a plane and I'll hop the pond. Is that what they say? Across the pond?
Yeah, across the pond, jump the pond, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and instead of you coming here, I'll come over there and I'll bring you some of these beers and we can have a couple together.
I would love that. I would. Make sure you bring them all, because I would want to try every single one.
And I'll bring you a seltzer. I'm telling you guys, I know it's not big in England, but look them up. Seltzers are huge. For the last 4 or 5 years in America, it's huge. And I think it's going to eventually make its way over there.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, guys, no, generally serious. I said, is that something you do with the nachos? Or the nachos? So that's what I think about it. So,
he's not joking. I know my accent is horrible, but it's seltzer. What is he? but not salsa. Salsa. You're thinking
Oh,
salsa.
oh, yeah, yeah. That
Salsa
would
and
make,
salsa.
yeah. But yeah, all right, okay. We'll keep it swiftly moving on. This is good momentum. Obviously we had last one actually on this event. We had Joe Giannotti. He was scheduled to be on that card. Unfortunately, that fell through. How big of a miss is that? Because obviously Joe, widely known, especially over in the UK, was came over, had that Paddy Pimblett incident as well. So, how big of a miss is that to get Joe, missing Joe on the card? Who's a champion as
Um,
well?
yeah, honestly, I don't want to be disrespectful to Joe and say it's not a miss, because obviously it is a miss when you miss out on having, Joe Giannetti on the card. He's been with Cage Titans 23 events, 22 events. All of his fights besides his UFC, he's only had 2 fights outside of our organization. It's definitely a miss, but at the same token, where I was saying it's not really a miss, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, the strength of this card in particular here in March was extremely strong. We already talked about Jay Perrin, ex-UFC guy. We already talked about Peter Barrett. Johnny Cupcakes has been around since Cage Titans 1. Then you got these 2 monsters in DeSoleil and Piersma. The strength of this card was top to bottom was already very strong. So it always stinks a little bit when you don't have Joe Giannetti fighting, but at the same time, I think this card was so strong already that fans aren't even going to notice, and they're just gonna. It's business as usual. They're going to be in for an amazing night.
Absolutely. We'll move it on. Being a president, I can imagine a lot of struggles. A lot of challenges, roadblocks that come your way. Could you name me the hardest one? What is that one when you looked at it and you think, I don't even know if we can get through this. Like this is possibly the biggest challenge that I've faced. And what did you do? What happened? I'd love for you to talk about it. But yeah, what has been that biggest struggle, the biggest challenge where you thought, wow, I don't know whether we can
Wow.
get through this or not.
Man, that's a great question. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't even know. I don't know. I'm a big believer in solving things, so I don't really look at things as problems or obstacles. I just like business as usual. You just kind of roll with the flow. Man, you got me tongue tied. As you can tell, I don't mind talking, but this question's got me tongue tied because I'm not really sure. I mean, just kind of every day, just the show itself is an obstacle. We're not this huge company where we have marketing departments and licensing departments and travel and set up. It's a very small community, a group of people that do this, and I'll be there first thing in the morning setting up the cage, and I'm the last one there breaking it down at night. I'm the one that's booking their airline tickets when we have fighters come in. I'm there meeting them at the airport, picking them up. So I just think that I know going into fight week or going into these events, they're just a challenge just in general. And it's you love what you do, so it's not a challenge. I don't know if that makes sense, but when you just enjoy it, you never look at it as a challenge. It's just, all right, here's what we're doing. Maybe if you asked me that question 10, 12, 13 years ago when we first started, I would probably have some better answers. But now 14 years later, we're such a kind of an oiled machine. We kind of just go, we know what we're doing. We show up, we just do it, and it's a machine now. So there's not too many challenges. There's small challenges. A guy comes in and missed his weight, and now we got to juggle a card. I mean, there's challenges where people are having difficulties getting medical, so we got to try to find them a doctor in their hometown. There's difficulties where fighters might try to negotiate last minute for more money and things like that. But overall, we do the same venue every event, so it's just really our carnival wagon comes in and we unload. We set up the tents, and we don't have tents, but that's kind of what we do. That we kind of roll into town, we set up, we break down, we go home, and it's pretty good.
Absolutely, and I'd love to talk more personally about yourself. They call you the discount Dana White. Firstly, that's funny. Who started that? Who came up with that? Obviously, that the similarities of you and Dana White, but who started that?
I mean, it's funny. I've heard discount Dana White. I've heard discount Joe Rogan. I think because listen, I'm a white bald guy with. I mean, Dana doesn't have a beard, but I'm a white bald guy that promotes MMA. I think I'm from Massachusetts. Dana was from Boston. Like, we're from the same area. We do the same thing. A lot of times when I tell people Cage Titans, they're like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh," they go, "Oh, UFC," and I'm like, "Well, it's MMA, but yeah, UFC." They're like, "Oh, so you're like Dana White?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then they usually go, "Well, you kind of look like him too." And I'm like, "Not really, but okay." I guess bald means all bald white guys look the same. I guess that means I look like Dana White.
That's really funny. Yeah, obviously, you play around with the gimmick, and you kind of go along with it. Is it to showcase the fans as well? Like, you got the personality, and they get invested in you some sort.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I've always believed that you have to resonate with your fans and kind of connect with them and pull back the curtain that we're humans. I talked about that when we were talking about fighters. Like, I'm just not some ringleader that has a lust for blood and wants to put people in there to rearrange their faces. And I'm just like, yeah, get excited. Like, we're all people. We're all humans. Like, this is just the sport that we love. And I think that comes from the early days, 14 years ago when I started, when we would go to town in Plymouth, it was like, "Ooh, you do MMA? Ooh, I don't like that." Like, no. But if I said I did boxing, they were like, "Oh, boxing? Yeah, come on in." "Oh, you do cage fighting?" It was just such a bad stigma. I think that, I just had to sell people on why it's not bad and that we are people and we are humans and we have a fighter who's a teacher. We've had a fighter who was a principal of a school. It's like these guys that you think are bloodthirsty barbarians are teaching your kids. Like, this just happens to be the sport that we enjoy. I know it might be odd for people, but it is. So I think I play up the personality a little bit because I am an outgoing guy, which made it easy for me to become a promoter. Dana White's not afraid to be in front of the camera. Back to the kind of question is like, he's not afraid to be in front of the camera. I'm not afraid to be in front of the camera. Yeah, and so it's easy, and I can play it up. And people like this. I did an interview not too long ago. They said, "Would you box Dana White?" I said, "Sure, I'll kick Dana White's ass. No jokes. Like, I'll beat his ass." But instead of me being called discount Dana White, if he loses, he's got to be called discount Michael Polvere.
That's absolutely funny, man. When you were just talking there, do you know what you just did?
What did I do?
You talked about your biggest challenge.
I did. Oh, man, you're good at this. You drew it out of me. And now that you say that, I remember going to Plymouth, and when we first went there in 2011, having to pay cash up front for everything we did, whether it was the police details, or using the venue, using the parking lots. They just were like, "No, we don't want any part of this. You can pay us up front. Like, we don't trust you people." All that, and getting them to embrace, you might think of the human cockfighting back in the early days. That was a big, "Oh, it's human cockfighting." You might think it's this, and we're just these evil people. There you go, man. I love that you brought it up. And from now on, I will always think of you if anybody ever asks me what my biggest challenge is, because that was my biggest challenge.
How have you seen that change then? From obviously, paying cash and all that what you talked about there. From now, I presume it's a lot more easier. You walk in, or you probably even send them, a bank transfer, a direct debit. I don't know how it works, but how has that changed from obviously the start and obviously now then?
Yeah, now we're well known in this area up here in New England, and especially in Plymouth. I live in Plymouth. My where I live is where we do the fights. So people see me out and about around town. My kids go to school in Plymouth. So we really built a community. We adopt families over Christmas in Plymouth, and we do toy drives. We've done parades in Plymouth. So like, we've kind of become part of the community. The high school newspaper just called me up last week, and we did an interview for their newspaper, and we're going to do like their little kids news program. So it's really been receptive. I think not only for us, because we were able to break down some barriers in Plymouth and in New England, but I also think the emergence of the UFC and its overall notoriety, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, that got people talking about MMA, at a broader scale. People that weren't into MMA were interested in that girl fighter. I think I told you before, I have a sports bar. People that never talked to me about MMA, when Ronda Rousey was fighting, was like, hey, when's that girl fighting? And then when Conor McGregor was on his surge, same thing. People would never talk to me about fighting and about cage fights. All of a sudden, they're asking me about Conor McGregor. So I think that not only did us as Cage Titans do a great job of kind of breaking those barriers down here in our specific spot in Plymouth and the surrounding areas, but I think the UFC has done a great job of blowing it up and really making it an accepted sport here in America.
I completely agree. And if anyone's watching this, or the PFL, or anyone, and I've got to say this, I feel like they've created the monopoly, and they might argue that, but I just never feel like there is going to be that co-leader, because, like you talked about earlier as well, people talk about MMA and they go, "Oh, UFC." It's just like, what I'm trying to say. That I feel like they've created that monopoly, and I just feel like the PFL have done a fantastic job at buying Bellator, that's hosting them fights, but I just feel like, to get on that scale where the UFC are, I just think it's a huge challenge, and I just don't see it. Although I would love to see a challenge, because I feel like if they get to that level, that will push the UFC harder, and then we'll see just bigger and better things. But I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's hard. Obviously, I don't know the sporting world in your area, but like, there's one Major League Baseball. There was many in years past, and they merged, and finally MLB, Major League Baseball. The NBA, there was an ABA, there's other leagues, and then eventually the NBA is basketball. NFL is American football. See, I knew we were doing this in England, so I said American football. So the NHL is hockey in America. So I think that the UFC is MMA, for a lack of a better term. And you're right. I mean, as competitors rise, there's some theories that it will make UFC better. I'm not sure, because the UFC was growing this sport for so many years and doing good things for the sport when there really wasn't any competitors. I mean, and to be quite honest, are these other people who are popping up competitors? They'll be competitors for a few years, and then they'll fizzle out. The UFC is a sustainable business at this point, where they make profit and they're able to sustain all their employees. All these other startup promotions are just relying on investment dollars. But one day those investors will be like, yeah, I'm done losing money on this dream of competing with the UFC, and they'll pull the plug, which they've done so many times over the years. Affliction, I don't know how long you've been following sport, but Affliction was a big one. Strikeforce, like, there was all these it's just eventually people stop wanting to investing money when they're losing, and they're not in it for that long game. The UFC is just so far ahead. It's really the UFC here, and even PFL, they might think they're here, but they're so much lower because they're not profitable yet. And that's the biggest differentiator between these other promotions that are trying to get to them. They can have Bill Gates come in and give him $100 million and say, start a promotion. Okay, cool. That well will eventually dry, and they hope that by the end of it, they're turning a profit, which if they're not, Bill Gates probably is not going to give them any more money.
Yeah, you mentioned Bill Gates there, and that brings to mind, didn't Donald Trump do something similar like that?
Donald Trump was part of Affliction.
There we go. Yeah, I remember putting that in my head, and I remember seeing him at that stand and trying to promote the fight, and I thought, what the hell? What's going on?
And that's what happened. I mean, eventually, these promotions, some guys are sitting around and say, I can do it better than Dana White. I can do it better than UFC. And it's like, all right, I have X amount of $1 million. I got X amount of $1 million. Let's start a rival. And it takes a lot of years. I mean, look how long the UFC's been at it. Like, it's been a long time. But we digress, and we can talk about that business side. But you're right. The UFC is very far away from all the competitors at this standpoint. Even did you look at the Anthony Joshua versus Nagano pay-per-view?
I did. Yes.
And it's like, the Saudi Arabians are paying millions and millions of dollars to these guys to do fights over there, and they're not bringing any money in. Maybe the novelty for the Saudi Arabians will wear off eventually, and they're just not going to dump money at people. And then what happens? There's no promotion because they're just, on a whim, they're saying, I want to see Anthony Joshua fight Tyson Fury. I got $20 million because that money is nothing to these guys, and they're just giving them the money to do it in their backyard. If I offered you $100 to come to my backyard and fight, you might be like, I'll fight my buddy for $100 in your backyard. That's what these Saudi Arabian guys are doing. They're just like plucking these stars, throwing money at them just to kind of fight for their entertainment. I don't know if that's a sustainable business, kind of like the UFC is.
Yeah, I like your thinking, Michael, 100%. And obviously, you talked about the Saudi Arabians. 20 million is probably 20 pound or 20 bucks to them. So it's incredible. Yeah, we'll get back on topic to yourself. Obviously, the whole process of running a show, I bet is completely stressful. Talk to me about any coping mechanisms. What does that look like? How do you put yourself down? Right, okay, I'm not doing this now. Let me have 20 minutes to chill. What is that? Did you play darts? Maybe drink a lager.
Actually, I just pushed through because for me the finish line is fight night. So once fight night happens, then the next morning when all the fighters get on their airplanes and they go home, once the last fighter is on his plane, I shut down for like 2, 3, 4 days because it's sleepless nights for 2, 3, 4 nights in a row where it's just like you're not sleeping because my internal brain is saying if I go to sleep right now on fight night, if I needed an extra hour to get something done, there's no extra. The show starts when the show starts. So I have a very hard time shutting the motor off leading up to fight night. And then my release is once everybody gets gone, and everybody's on their plane and they're off going home the next morning, I shut down. My wife, I have 5 kids. My wife will take the kids out. I'll sleep in all day. Maybe I'll watch a movie. I like watching movies. So I'll throw a movie on. I'll sleep all day. I won't answer my phone. Usually what happens is the minute that last guy gets on the plane, my phone goes off and I just decompress.
What you talked about movies there? What's your favorite fight week movie? Surely there's a movie that you rewatch every time just to get yourself motivated. Surely it's got to be.
Honestly, I'm believe it or not, I love movies, but I am not a watch a movie more than once guy. I know that's bad. I can't watch movies more than once. So whatever, this week, the new Roadhouse with Conor McGregor came out. So I watched that. I watched that this week. And then from here on out, this is fight week for me. So there's no downtime, whether after I get done with you, I have to print all the fighters' medicals. Tomorrow I'm meeting with the athletic commission to bring all the medicals and licensing. Tuesday, we kind of do all the follow-up and prep for fight week. Wednesday with production team, because we do all our own production as well. We're a production company, so we don't hire outside people to film our fights. I own all the cameras. I hire all the, a friend of a guy who used to fight for me is our producer. So it's all in-house. So that's Tuesday. Wednesday, I have fighters flying in. Thursday's press conference. Friday's weigh-ins. Saturday is cage set, light rig set, everything in one day. Then we break it down at night, and the next day I get to sleep.
I don't know whether you thought of this or not, or even your team, but I think it would be great if you could have just someone to follow you around throughout the whole week and just document it. A president's lead up to fight night. That I think that would be good.
You're onto something. We actually, so funny enough, we had a company that was doing a documentary on some of our fighters, and they wanted to mic me up for a show. And wow. I said, all right, listen, that's fine, but I'm not going to stop and wait for cameras. Like, I'm on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
go. So like, if you guys keep up, cool. If you can't, I'm not stopping waiting for you. About a half an hour in, they took the microphone off me and they said, yeah, listen, this ain't going to work. We can't keep up. Like, you know, with everything going on, you know, so they just kind of were like, yep, unplug, do your thing. And it would be fun. So I do love it. I love the idea. Maybe that will put something on, and we'll put you as an executive producer on it, because it was you came up with the idea here.
Yeah, all you have to do is just fly me over, and I'll be there, and I'll do it. I'm cheap labor. Just all I need is the flights. That's it.
All right,
Anyway,
man, definitely.
yeah. Anyway, talk to me about the process throughout the whole, start to the beginning. Obviously, the UFC have their, their war room. How they match, they match the fights. What does it look like for Cage Titans? Talk, bring me into the office, or into the meetings a little bit. What does it look like for
Yeah,
Cage Titans? How does that all play out?
pretty much. I mean, I'm the matchmaker as well, so surprise. So essentially, after an event, like right now, we have some fights that are targeted for May that we already kind of know about. But after an
Yeah,
event, it's essentially like circling a couple guys, being like, all right, we know he came out healthy. This guy came out healthy. You think he's going to want to turn it around? And then it's reaching out to the schools. We don't sign anybody to a contract with Cage Titans. I don't believe in forcing a contract onto a fighter that says they have to fight for us. That's a big difference that we do. We don't sign them to contracts. We have handshakes and verbal agreements. You want to fight for Cage Titans? Cool. I want you to fight for Cage Titans? Cool. You can fight this guy for this much money. All right. Sounds like a plan. And that's our deal. Because I never want a fighter to be forced to have to fight for us because they signed a piece of paper. So essentially, right after the show, I'll circle a couple names that I'd like to have back, or some guys that are under our umbrella that are repeat customers, so to speak, like Johnny Cupcakes and Peter Barrett, Giannetti, that we just kind of know that if we have a card, they want to be on it. And then I reach out to all the local schools and I put up our event date. So it's not like the UFC where we have a roster board where there's 700 fighters under roster and it's picking which fighter that wants to fight. It's kind of like we put the word out. I know that on May 25th, Giannetti wants to fight. I know Johnny Cupcakes said he wants a quick turnaround. Perrin wants a quick turnaround. There's guys that have already expressed that, hey, you have 6 dates this year. I want to fight on all 6 cards. So I kind of have that list group of names. And then when we release, the date, hey, I'm matching right now for May 25th, I'll get a bunch of schools that will send me names. And I put that into a pile. I got this pile of people that want to match against these guys that put their name and want fights. And I look at the list and I just kind of come up with the best matchups possible. And that's really it. That's the process. Sometimes if you want to know the war room is an Excel spreadsheet. And I put everybody in an Excel spreadsheet and I highlight some guys orange. I highlight a guy green, I highlight a guy red. And then if I have 2 reds, that's a match. And I'll message the school and I'll say, hey, Mike Dexter, Jake Kasky is your fighter. You gave him to me. He's 145. Joe Lozon gave me Ryan Kennedy at 145. What do you say? Your guy was a wrestler. This guy had no wrestling. This guy's a purple belt. Joe Lozon's Ryan Kennedy is a purple belt who's never wrestled, and he likes to strike. Jake Kasky is a no belt because he doesn't do gi jiu-jitsu, who was a high-level high school wrestler with some decent striking. You guys want to fight? Cool. They both say yes. Matchup made. We're under agreement, and we throw it out there to the world to digest.
It's very much different, but I like it. The spreadsheet as well. I'm a spreadsheet man. Whenever it comes to anything, it makes you organized, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people might think it's crazy. Some people like, what's Excel? Because some younger kids don't even know what an Excel spreadsheet is. But yeah, that just works for us. Another thing that I do a little differently, because obviously the UFC, PFL, Bellator, those bigger shows, they have their fighters under contract. So they're trying to pick and plot where they put them. They have cards that are all over the world. So they're like, all right, Michael Venom Page might make sense for a fight in England. but he might not make sense for a fight in Oklahoma or, whatever the case may be. We have all our events in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So we kind of like the fighters who are local we already know that they want to get on this card. And then what we do is we'll take names from out of country. Like we're flying a guy in from Brazil. We flew a guy in from France, and he fought for our title. So I'll have like a running tally of guys who have expressed interest in fighting for Cage Titans, and I have their records and their weights. And if it makes sense, we put the fight together. So yeah, it's a little different, but hey, it works.
Absolutely. You talked about Plymouth there. We have a Plymouth here in the UK, but I want to talk about Plymouth, Massachusetts, if I'm saying it right. The area, obviously, a very successful area for yourself. You talked about all your events, most of your events have been in the Plymouth area. Again, they all come out and they come to your event. The sold out arenas. What does that mean for you? Seeing it over and over again. To see these fans come to your show. Your 64th event, 64th this one. Obviously, you said you had some fight nights as well, so 78th officially. But what does it mean for you to see these fans, come to your show in, show out, just and come back? As you talked about repeat customers, what does that mean for you?
I think it makes me a little bit emotional because like this is something that was a vision, 14 years ago that I thought I would do once and never again. And, to be able to build something that people, it's just a part of their life now and helping them, especially these fighters, live their dream. I remember what it was like for a fighter. And I'll tell you right now, 15 plus years ago, the promoters weren't nice people. They were that, the stigma around it was like Don King, which is, Mike Tyson's promoter who famously stole money from him and all the crazy stuff. They weren't good people. So it makes me so happy that I've built something that the community really embraces, the fighters really embrace. They know that they're going to get a great show. So the fighters, I think stability. We've been able to build something that's, it's you can count on us. Like when we release a date, that we're going to have a show. You know the level of show. The level of production. The level of matchups. I think it's known. Like if you go to an NBA game, no matter what NBA team you go to, you're going to get the glitz, the glamour, the music, the sound, the lights, high level athletes competing. I think that's what we built at Cage Titans. You kind of know what you're going to get. And Plymouth is great. I don't know. Do you know much about Plymouth, Massachusetts?
I know about Plymouth in the UK, but I don't know about Plymouth, Massachusetts. You're going to have to sell me it. What we got there?
Well, I won't have to sell it. It's actually called America's Hometown because I don't know what in the UK they said who discovered America, but here in the United States, Christopher Columbus discovered Americas. Yeah. And guess where he landed?
Plymouth. I don't know.
Plymouth, Massachusetts. So
there we go.
Plymouth, Massachusetts is America's hometown because that's where Christopher Columbus landed in 1492. So it's already kind of like a well-known, well-established place in America. People know it, Plymouth, Massachusetts. For us, it's a touristy area. There's the beaches, Plymouth Rock, where he actually landed, one of the Mayflowers, which he sailed over here from Europe over to and discover the Americas, is located here. So it's a touristy town already, in the summertime especially. So we're just an attraction for the town. It's a beautiful town, beautiful areas, shops, restaurants, bars, pubs. Hillary Pub is a place you would love. It's like one of the first bars ever in America. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful town. It's right on the water. When you walk outside our venue, you're looking at the ocean. It's just a beautiful area. I mean, and not a lot of people in America, I guess, get that because I have fighters come from all the time that have never even seen ocean water. So, because we're landlocked in a lot of areas, and they'll come there and they'll be like, I've never seen ocean in my entire life. And it's the winter and they're going to put their feet in the ocean. I'm like, you guys are crazy. It's freezing out and you're out in the ocean, but they've never seen an ocean before. So it's just a beautiful area. But yes, it's famous for Christopher Columbus, who discovered America. I think recent history has changed that, and Christopher Columbus is kind of out, and they say the Vikings discovered America now. But when I was growing up, and for up until probably the last 10 years, Christopher Columbus discovered America, and he landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
There we go. There we have it. I'm gonna have to search up Plymouth and see what it's all about. It sounds good. Beaches, ocean. Luckily I've seen an ocean before, but yeah, it sounds good. I'm gonna have to give it a search up.
How's Plymouth? UK?
Plymouth, UK, quite similar. It's next to the sea, next to the ocean. It didn't sound as good as that, to be honest. What we have there's a lot of military base, army base, Royal Navy. Over here in the UK we have Royal Navy. They're kind of based near there because obviously it's near the ocean. Like they can go wherever they want.
Is it PLI?
No, it's spelled the exact same way.
PLY. Okay, perfect. All right, because I've seen some Plymouths with PLIMOUTH.
Well, I'm hoping it's the same way. PLY. Yeah, Plymouth. Yeah, that's spelled the exact same way. The exact same way.
Right, cool.
Next question. We talked about obviously, the Plymouth fans coming out to your show, show in, show out. Is it quite surreal, walking into that arena, and seeing these guys? Maybe you most definitely see a lot of familiar faces when you go to the show. But when you talked about it, it's quite emotional. Is it quite surreal that you go into the your arena and you see these fans that have come out to watch your show again? How does that feel?
It's amazing, like I said, the community that we've built, and we have fans that come every event, and I'm walking through the crowd, shaking their hand, saying hello. And it's great to see the early days, kind of what the difference was. Like in the early days of Cage Titans, if you knew a fighter, you came to a show. And then the next show, if that fighter wasn't fighting, you didn't come to a show. It was only close family and friends of that specific fighter. So the crowds would change depending on who was fighting. Now, we have guys that are just that are super fans of Cage Titans, that are there in and out, no matter who's fighting. They know they're buying front row tickets for Cage Titans in March and May and July, every show. And also we embrace them. We do. So Rob Pico, who's one of our super fans, his son-in-law fought for us in like 2016. And he only came to the fights in 2016 to support his son-in-law. Here he is 8 years later, and he's at every show, front row, and he brings a group anywhere from 20 to 30 people. Last event, he came with a group of 33 guys, all front row tickets. And he actually is the guy who used to go to Second Wind Brewing, and he would, sorry, somebody's calling me, but he would go to Second Wind Brewing before the fights, and he was the one that convinced him to do the Cage Titans beer. So he was a fan who's become a part of our, really tight-knit community. Big Mikey De Silva's another guy. He actually went to high school with Joe Giannetti, and he would only come to the fights because of Giannetti. And now he comes to every show. He's part of the Cage setup crew. He does some community outreach stuff for us. And, so it's really amazing to see these fans that are having such a great time, and now they're just a fan of the sport. Not, hey, I'll come to your fight, but I'm not into fighting, but I'll come to support you, but I really don't want to be there, but I'll buy a ticket because that's what the early days of fans were. Now it's like, hey, when's the next Cage Titans? Are you on that card? Oh, man, you're not? Oh, I'm going to go anyway. It's like I'm still going to get a ticket, and I'm still going to go, and seeing those familiar faces. It's really nice, and it's really awesome. It really is.
Absolutely. The arena itself on fight night. How would you describe the atmosphere? In the Plymouth Memorial Arena, in the Plymouth Memorial Hall. What is that like? How would you describe that?
It's really surreal because it's an old like concert hall, and it's all stadium seating. So it's not where some local fights are, where it's one level and you're all sitting in chairs at the same height and you're looking over people and everybody's standing. It's a Coliseum type where it's a bowl, And the cage is in the
Yeah,
bottom, and all the seats go around and up at angles. So you have a great seat no matter what. And what's beautiful about it is a beautiful stage that we have the fighters come out and they walk off the stage and then they go down into the bowl and they're looking up and you're looking up and they're looking around like this. And there's people all around you and you're in the middle and you're in the cage. And it's really amazing. And you can really feel the energy of the crowd and you can feed off that. I was privileged enough to fight there twice. And it really is different because you're looking around and you feel like a gladiator. So I think that's what really is amazing for the fighters. As for the fans, when you go to other shows, there's always other things going on. So you go to a big UFC in Vegas and you're at a casino and you're hanging out and you're gambling, then you're going to watch your friend fight, and then you're going back to the casino and you're going to watch something else. I think at our venue, because it's an old building and it's an old theater type coliseum, there's not a lot of places for you to kind of group up and socialize. If you go to stadiums in England or anywhere, there's always places underneath the seats in the concourse where you can kind of hang out and talk and have a beer and just kind of like be away from the noise of the stadium underneath it and just kind of be talking and hanging out. There's nothing like that at Memorial Hall. You're forced to stay in your seat the entire time. So you're watching the fights. There's no places to gather and socialize. Once you get in there, you're in your seat and you're sitting there the whole night. And so the emotion is on a constant high. It's not like you're really excited and then you go out to the concourse with a couple of your buddies, you're having some beers and you're just chilling out and hanging out for 10, 15 minutes before you go back to your seat and watch a couple of the other fights, and you got to get all excited again. You're just constantly excited because you're just watching fights.
How do you get a beer? There's got to be a bar.
We bring the beer to you. We have beer girls. They come right to you. They have little trays and they bring them right to you. You don't have to get up.
This is absolutely incredible. You're selling me a dream here, Michael. This is we don't get this in the regional shows in England. I tell you that for sure.
Oh man, definitely. We do something a little different here. Something different in the water over here in Mass.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Next question. I want to talk about looking forward. The future. 1 year and 5 year. What does it look like for Cage Titans? Obviously for yourself as well. What are you looking to accomplish in 1 year and 5 years time? What is that?
Man, I really don't have any long-term goals. I mean, maybe that's bad for business, but my goal is this upcoming Saturday, March 30th, and making sure we put the best event we possibly can and make sure everybody has the best experience they can have. And then it's on to May 25th. I don't have any visions of grandeur. Like I want to do bigger venues or I want to travel the country and do these shows everywhere. I think that we have our niche here in New England and we really just continually do better every time I say this all the time. We want to raise our bar. You mentioned earlier Dana White, if there's more competition, maybe he'll push them harder. For Cage Titans, my motto is we raise our bar. We're not raising the bar, for other people to attain. We're raising our own bar. And we just want to continually perfect what we do. And I don't know. So it's just continually to pump out new shows. You know what I'd like to do, I guess? I want to build a Jumbotron inside Memorial Hall. So there's my goal. I want to build a Jumbotron there so that we have our own Jumbotron. That's a goal. That's one of my goals.
That would be a spectacle to say the least. But yeah.
Well, it happened because when we first started doing Cage Titans, I rented a cage, then I bought the cage. Then we would just have like these little shop lights that were on the cage. Then 2 years ago, I went out and bought this entire light rig. It's a huge structure that goes above the cage. I got the lights from China, shipped over here, spent a ton of money to get all that. So, those kind of things are what I like to do. We talked earlier about business where, there's not funding for us. We're all self-funded. When I started this, it was funded by me and everything that we put into the show is funded by ticket sales and stream sales. So, I guess, that's it. So yeah, maybe we'll build it and it'll be pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'd love to see that happen down the future. My last question that I have for you, Michael. Yeah, I can't believe you know we're about to tick off 1 hour. I apologize, obviously, firstly for keeping you that this long. I know it's about to get to fight week, and you're going to be a very very busy man. So 1 hour, I really really appreciate it. Thank you very much. The last question: if there is someone that is watching this, maybe from the Plymouth area, I believe there's probably not many because they've probably all been to your show already. But if there is someone that's watching this and they're thinking this guy seems like a good idea, Cage Titans seems like a good idea, give them 2 reasons why they should watch this event or attend this event, or if best, the next one.
Man, great question. I mean, honestly, this card in particular is just a very highly anticipated card because there's so many names are on it. We talked about earlier, Johnny Cupcakes Campbell, who's also a Plymouth resident. So if you're local to Plymouth, he lives in Plymouth as well. So support your own local fighter. And he's been a part of Cage Titans since Cage Titans won back in 2010. And here he is 14 years later, still fighting in a highly competitive fight. Peter Barrett, who's been around for Cage Titans, we've shipped him off to the UFC. We got him here again. We're trying to bring him back there. Jay Perrin, same thing. And then we have newcomers like Everett Desailly and John Piersmar, who, if you told me somebody who made their debut at Cage Titans, my last Cage Titans event, would be headlining a card above names like Johnny Campbell, Jay Perrin, and Peter Barrett, I'd tell you you'd be crazy. But that's what happened because these guys put on such dynamic performances. They are in the headlining spot on this card, and they're new to Cage Titans fans, and they're fighting for the welterweight title. And I promise you, these guys, Piersma or Everett, one of them, if not both, could be in the UFC easily with the momentum that they have going. The second reason, we bring a great show. We have a lot of fun with it, and you never know what you're going to get at a Cage Titans event, whether it's beers, whether it's T-shirt cannons. We're always trying to have fun and be interactive with the fans, and we want to make it a good experience when you go home and you're like, wow, I got my money's worth and I had a good time. So those are reasons why you want to enjoy Cage Titans, either this one or the next one. If it's this one, hopefully you have your ticket to be at Plymouth Memorial Hall because we are sold out. So if you don't have a ticket, unfortunately, you won't be able to be in the building, but you can stream it on Spectation Sports.
Absolutely. So make sure you watch it. This one, maybe you can get yourself a teaser of, maybe attending the next one. So yeah, don't listen to me. Make sure you listen to Michael because he's the man. He's got all the words that to make you want to watch this because I want to watch this now. I want to go over there in Plymouth and witness this live. So Michael, an absolute pleasure. Thank you very thank you very much for for joining me as I talked about an hour and 2 minutes. I appreciate your time. I know fight week is fast approaching. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate that very, very much. And thank you very much. That's it. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing the fights.
Man, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been an hour, but it felt like 10 minutes. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully the fans in England become a fan of Cage Titans. I know we're not Cage Warriors, but Cage Titans also brings it too. So become a fan. Check us out, Cage Titans, across all social media, and get a taste of what we have to offer.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Michael, an absolute pleasure. We'll catch you in the next one. This one's a little bit longer. I do apologize, but yeah, next one should be good as well. Make sure you stay around.